Hi, I'm Lacey. My sister threw me a baby shower, then announced she was carrying my dead husband's child. In front of everyone. No warning, no mercy. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing my whole family helped her plan it. The lies, the signatures, the silence. Why would they all turn on me like that? Have you ever been betrayed by someone who shares your blood? Do you believe family secrets are more dangerous than lies? What time are you listening to this? And where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I really want to know. Nora's living room looked like a catalog shoot. Everything had been curated to scream happiness. Soft streamers, pastel onesies, welcome baby signs looped above the dessert table like it was some sort of altar. Everyone played their part. Smiles that held too long. Compliments rehearsed. Even the finger sandwiches sat on porcelain trays like they'd been pre-approved by a stylist. I hovered by the punch table, sipping something pink and too sweet, and tried not to think about Russell. But of course I did. He would have hated this. The fake laughter, the performance of closeness. He would have whispered something irreverent in my ear and pulled me out to the backyard. But he was gone, and I was here, alone in a crowd of people who pretended I wasn't unraveling. Nancy caught my eye. "You look tired, sweetheart. Still not sleeping?" Her voice was syrup thick with concern she didn't mean. "Better," I lied. She nodded, already turning back to Nora, who was basking in the attention. A glowing orb of adoration. She patted her belly like it was a royal heir. Something was wrong. I couldn't name it. Just the way people's conversations stalled when I passed. The way Nora kept glancing at me like she was waiting for a cue. Then my phone buzzed. Bank alert. A scheduled transfer. $1,200 to my parents. Third one this quarter. All from Russell's accounts. All automatic. All silent. I set the cup down. It clinked too hard against the crystal tray. Ting, ting, ting. Nora tapped her glass with a spoon. The room quieted like someone had killed the music. "I just want to say something before we open gifts," she said. "Something important." My stomach dropped. She smiled that soft, smug smile of hers. The father of my baby was Russell. For a second, no one moved. Then the sound of my punch glass hitting the floor split the air. Nora didn't flinch. She reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of photos like she was dealing cards. Her and Russell, holding hands, hugging outside what looked like a hotel. The room gasped. My mother clutched her chest. My father looked expectant. No one looked at me. I didn't move. I couldn't. It was like someone had sucked all the air out of the room, and I was the only one left suffocating. A hand touched my arm. I jerked back. It was Nancy. "Sweetheart, let's not make this harder than it already is." "Harder?" I backed away. Behind me, the whispers started. Wasn't she the widow? How long were they together? That poor baby. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking. Another notification. Someone had posted a video of the announcement, cropped to perfection. Me in the background, expressionless like a ghost. The caption read, "Sister-in-law shocked to learn truth about baby's father." It had already been shared. I turned off my screen and looked around. Not a single person met my eyes. They already knew. I stepped back into the spilled punch, my shoes soaking through. The glass had cracked clean down the middle, one half floating in pink liquid like a broken promise. I didn't say a word. Not yet. They didn't just ambush me. They buried me alive. And now I know why the grave was already dug. The morning after felt quieter than it should have. The kind of silence that hums in your chest, not your ears. I sat on the floor, hunched over the skirt I wore last night, scrubbing out a pink punch stain that had already sunk into the hem. No amount of detergent was going to fix it, but I kept scrubbing. My mother once said, "The things we don't talk about tend to get louder." This stain, this morning, this aching silence, it was screaming. They didn't just spring that announcement on me. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a presentation, a well-timed, well-dressed execution. I wasn't collateral damage. I was the stage. When I called them, I expected denial, shock at least, but all I got was logic. It was the right time for Nora, my mother said, like I was the one who had misread the script. I asked her how long she'd known. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, "You've always been stronger than her." That was when I understood. They hadn't just stood by, they'd participated. They helped her line up the knife. They passed it to her, handle first. When I hung up, my hands were steady. My chest wasn't. Later, I pulled out the lockbox where we kept Russell's documents. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. I only knew I needed something real, something mine. But what I found wasn't his love letters or our mortgage papers. It was a file tucked beneath everything else. A legal draft titled, Contingency Clause, Non-Marital Descendant Allocation. His signature was at the bottom, tight, crooked. And suddenly I remembered. That night he came home, quieter than usual. Said he'd met with Nancy. Said she was planning for the future. I thought she meant medical directives or estate logistics. But she meant this. She meant betrayal with a preamble. Russell probably signed it to keep the peace. That was the thing about him. He avoided conflict the way I absorbed it. Maybe that's why we worked. Maybe that's why it broke me now. They hadn't stumbled into this. They'd built it. And I had no seat at their table, just a plate with my name on it, waiting to be cleared. The first thing I noticed was the date. April 17th, the day after the funeral. I didn't remember anything about that day except the sedatives and the sound of my own heartbeat in a room full of flowers. But my laptop did. It remembered the login, the transfer, the name on the authorization line. It wasn't mine. My cursor hovered over Russell's trust account, the same one he'd set up 3 years before he died. He used to call it our safety net. But I'd just watched $5,000 vanish from it. The signature on the withdrawal was close, but not close enough. My name, written by someone else. Panic rose in my throat like bile. I reread it 3 times. The account ID matched. The IP address came from a device registered under Gerald Voss. 16 years ago, my father taught me how to sign my name with a pen between his fingers and mine. Always own what you write, he said. I had no idea he was rehearsing. I called Derek. We met at a cafe where no one knew our names. He didn't say hello. He slid the printed documents toward himself and examined them like they were an autopsy. It's not Nora, he said finally. This was executed by someone with legal authority, not stolen access. This was structured. I stared at the screen until the lines blurred. So he forged it? He used an old power of attorney, outdated and expired, but enough to manipulate the system. He knew which buttons to push. My father, I said. It wasn't a question. Derek's silence was confirmation enough. Nora wasn't the puppet master. She was just the knife. My father was the hand that held it. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just felt something settle, low and cold in my gut. Not sadness, not even betrayal, just understanding. They hadn't broken me. They had redirected me. That night, I got a message from my mother. Come for dinner. Nora's making that chicken you like. Let's just talk, okay? I didn't respond. Instead, I drove there and sat in the dark, parked half a block down the street. I could see them through the dining room window. My chair was empty. Nora laughed loud. Gerald raised a wine glass. Nancy leaned in close to whisper something behind her hand. I didn't get out. They didn't stumble into this. They drew maps. They locked the door on me. But I'm the one holding the keys now. Maureen's letter came on cream paper, the kind that leaves residue on your fingertips. Her handwriting was steady, elegant, untouched by the tremble I felt reading her words. I believe you deserve to know the truth. About Russell. About why he never told you. If you're willing, I'll be at Clementine's Diner Thursday, 6 p.m. I almost didn't go, but curiosity is a crueler ache than grief. She was already there when I arrived, seated in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a chipped coffee cup like it was the only warm thing she trusted. She looked like Russell, around the eyes. Tired, but precise. She didn't waste time. Maureen slid a file across the table. Thin, clinical, undeniable. Russell Quinn. Diagnosed. Complete azoospermia. Infertile. Permanent. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. My mind spun through every word Nora had said, every picture she'd flashed, every look my parents gave each other across a crowded room. He hated talking about it, Maureen said softly. It broke him more than you'd know. My voice barely formed. So why didn't he tell me? She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Or maybe because I already did. He thought he was protecting me, or maybe protecting them from me. Later that night, I pulled out the keepsake box. Russell's old letters, cards, receipts we never tossed. At the bottom, beneath folded vacation maps and a dried lily from our wedding, I found the envelope. My name, his handwriting, torn seal re-glued. Inside, not a letter, not the explanation he must have written, a sympathy card, blank. I held it up to the lamp. The glue shimmered. Someone in my family had opened it. Someone decided I didn't need to know. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I stared at the card for a long time before sliding it back into the envelope. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat in the quiet until it no longer felt foreign. On his birthday, Russell used to say, "Some truths arrive late, but they always show up." I opened his journals, pages full of calm thoughts and restless edits. His handwriting grew smaller toward the end, like he was trying to disappear between lines. He never wrote about my family, but the silence was louder than words. "You tried to protect me," I whispered, "or you tried to protect them from me. Either way, you lost." Rain began to tap the windows, soft, then insistent. I didn't cry because I missed him. I cried because I finally saw him clearly. If they were willing to bury a letter, what else did they think they buried with him? Sharon texted, "Can we talk? Just us." I didn't answer for an hour. Not out of spite. I needed that time to rehearse staying silent. We met near my office, in front of a cafe where the lights always flickered overhead. She wore a beige coat and guilt in her eyes. Her hands stayed in her pockets. Mine stayed clenched. "I didn't know what to do," she said, voice tight. "They said it would blow over." "Who's they?" I asked. She didn't blink. "Your mom? Your dad? Nora?" I felt my stomach knot, not from surprise, but from confirmation. They told me to keep my head down, said I wasn't part of it, that it wasn't my place. I stayed quiet. She shifted, eyes flicking down. And I listened, because I thought, if I got involved, I'd lose them. Her voice cracked at the edge. "But watching you at that shower, watching them do that to you, I felt sick." Still, I didn't speak. "I brought something," she said. We moved to her car. She reached into the glove box and pulled out a small silver USB stick. No label, just a quiet weight. I kept a backup. She clicked it into her laptop, and sound filled the space between us. "So we'll have the guests seated before she walks in," Nora's voice, then Nancy's. "We'll give her one clean break. She'll never recover from that." I didn't breathe. My spine straightened like a pulled thread. Sharon stared at me. I couldn't keep pretending it was just Nora. They planned it. All of it. My throat stayed dry, but something cracked behind my ribs. Not from pain, from relief. I took the USB, slid it into my bag. "You're not forgiven," I said, "but you're useful." At home that night, I listened to the file again, and again. Each time, the same words sharpened. My family didn't react to my grief. They orchestrated it. I scrolled through my voicemail history, deleted every message from Nancy, from Gerald, even from Nora. But the audio? That stayed. They taught me silence was safety. But I'm about to teach them what silence sounds like when it's broken. The envelope was thick and legal, the kind that doesn't whisper. It lands with a thud. The receptionist handed it to me like it was radioactive. "Someone dropped this for you. Said it was urgent." I didn't open it right away. I knew what was inside before I even tore the tab. The words printed across the top confirmed it. Notice of civil action, defamation, and emotional harm. Nora was suing me. I stood in the corner of the lobby, fluorescent lights buzzing above me, like I was caught in some cruel spotlight. I scanned the claim: emotional trauma, character damage, harassment during pregnancy, a line underlined in bold. Public behavior unbecoming of a grieving widow. Nancy called me before I could even sit down. "Honey, we don't have to make this uglier than it already is. I'm not the one who called an attorney. She's under stress, you know that. She's scared." She should be. Nancy sighed like I was being the dramatic one. "Let's not drag this through court. We're family." My voice was flat. "Tell her I'm filing back." That night, the news aired a local piece called "When Grief Turns Bitter." A clip played from a baby shower guest's phone, Nora trembling, clasping her bump. Then my interview, sliced and stripped of context. Just me saying, "There's no proof that baby is his." They cut the question. They cut the rage in my voice. What aired sounded cold, calculated, unkind. The emails started pouring in. "I thought you had more class." "Poor Nora, she's doing this alone." Even someone from Russell's old firm wrote, "He wouldn't have wanted this." I almost replied. Then I didn't. I just walked into Derek's office and dropped the USB on his desk. "The audio from Sharon. Use it." He didn't ask questions. He just nodded. I looked around his office, at the framed law degree, the neat rows of files, the hard lines of a man used to handling other people's chaos. I unclasped my wedding ring, slid it into a small black box labeled estate evidence, and shut it. It clicked. "They wanted a war," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "I just decided to stop losing it." The spreadsheet filled Derek's wall like a confession. Each row glowed with numbers that had faces. My face. Russell's. Ours. The header read, "Emergency Family Fund." "What is this?" I asked, already knowing. "Your father's pet project," Derek replied, voice cold. "Clever on paper, legally disguised, functionally disgusting." The transactions were dated, color-coded, and quietly damning. New tile floors for Nora's kitchen, private PR consultation, maternity photography with someone named Janelle High-End Studio, paid from the estate, Russell's name on the fund, my signature nowhere. Derek leaned back. He used the law like a scalpel, and it cut exactly where he aimed. I stared at the last column, initialized by Gerald Voss. The name felt distant, clinical, but I could still hear it as I used to say it as a child. Daddy. 16 years ago, he told me never to sign anything unless I knew what it meant. And now, here he was, signing everything in my name after I'd buried my husband. My phone buzzed. It was a hospital billing contact, replying to a request I didn't remember sending. I opened it. At the bottom of the discharge summary, sedation request approved by next of kin, Gerald Voss. He drugged me the day of the burial, for my peace, but mostly it seems for access. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I drove to their house. Nancy opened the door, smile faltering as she saw my face. "Lacey, sweetie. Where's Dad?" "In the dining room. We were just—" I walked past her. He looked up from his plate like I was a guest who'd forgotten to knock. "We were about to eat." I laid the printout on the table. Line after line of theft dressed as order. "I know what you did," I said. My voice didn't shake. "And I know when you started." He didn't touch the papers. I pulled out the hospital form. 6 hours after the burial, you requested the sedation. You signed off on it. While I was unconscious, you started clearing the estate. Gerald finally spoke. It was necessary. Nancy reached for me. I stepped back. "You don't get to explain. You don't get to call this family anymore." They both sat frozen. I looked at the dining table, the same one we'd gathered around for birthdays, holidays, meaningless Thursdays. It looked smaller now, like something borrowed, something staged. "This isn't just fraud," I said. I took the last paper from my coat pocket and placed it on the table. Russell's final tax file, marked incomplete, because the dead don't update anything. "This is spiritual theft," I met Gerald's eyes, "and I will make you answer for every cent and every silence." Derek didn't say anything when I walked in. He just turned the screen toward me. It showed a time-stamped patient record, or rather, the absence of one. "There's no prenatal file under her name," he said. "Not at this clinic, not anywhere in state." Sharon leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. She skipped every appointment, always had an excuse, sick, car trouble, rescheduled. I stared at the screen like it might confess something else, something more forgivable. But it didn't. It only confirmed what I'd suspected the day she held her belly like it was some kind of shield. There was no baby, not from Russell, not from anyone. Derek laid a folder beside me. It contained images Nora had posted to social media weeks ago, one in particular, the sonogram. He tapped his tablet. "Metadata says it originated from Pinterest, uploaded 3 years ago. No file history beyond that." I closed my eyes. It wasn't rage this time. It was a bone-deep stillness, the kind you feel when you finally reach the bottom. We filed the motion that day. At the hearing, Nora arrived in beige and pearl, her hand perched protectively over the lie she'd built. Nancy was at her side, lips pressed into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Derek stood, calm as a surgeon. "Your Honor, we present Exhibit A, sonogram metadata." The screen lit up. Exhibit B, communication records confirming evasion of medical verification. Nora's lawyer squirmed. "This is circumstantial. She's under emotional strain." "She fabricated a pregnancy to obtain access to a trust," Derek said. "That's not strain, that's fraud." The judge looked over her glasses. "Miss Duval, are you currently under the care of an OB/GYN?" Nora didn't answer. The judge repeated the question. When silence stretched too long, she nodded once. "All estate disbursements to Miss Duval are suspended pending a full review. We will also subpoena medical verification." Nancy stood up. "You're humiliating her." "No," I said. "She did that herself." Nora turned to me, her voice cracked. "You want to ruin me?" "I want you out of Russell's legacy." Her lips trembled, but I saw no tears, just the slow collapse of entitlement. Outside the courthouse, microphones rose like weeds. I walked past them. No statements, no comment, just the truth, delivered. At home, I placed the printed sonogram beside Russell's medical records, in bold, unambiguous font. Infertility diagnosis confirmed, complete azoospermia. He had been telling the truth the whole time, just not with words. And now, I had done the same. I didn't take down a sister, I dismantled a myth, and I'd do it again. The sun came in soft through the kitchen blinds, thin lines of warmth that didn't reach my chest. The courthouse was behind me, so was the noise, the press, the slamming of doors. I had won. That's what they said anyway. But victory doesn't come with applause when you're the one who was right all along. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't drink and stared at Russell's old briefcase. It hadn't been opened since the week before his accident. I used to think it smelled like cedar and ambition. Now it smelled like dust and endings. Inside were files, notebooks, his favorite pen. I found the small packet Maureen gave me, his medical record with that word stamped in thick black ink, infertile. I set it next to the printed sonogram Nora had shared online. They looked absurd beside each other. One real, one stolen, but both now silent. Sharon stopped by with coffee and that shaky look people wear when they want forgiveness, but know they haven't earned it. She handed me a vanilla latte and stayed standing, like sitting might make it too familiar. "I should have spoken up sooner," she said. I nodded. "But you didn't." I didn't know how. I looked at her for a long time, then gently. "You didn't break me, Sharon. You just showed me who to rebuild without." She left the coffee. I didn't drink it. Later, a courier dropped off a letter from Gerald. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just 3 pages of context, justification, and numbers. I lit a match and watched it curl to ash in the sink. Maureen and I met in the park that weekend. She brought sandwiches wrapped in wax paper and a quiet kind of grace. "You gave my son something I never could," she said, watching the trees sway above us. "Peace." We sat in silence, not because we ran out of things to say, but because not all wounds needed words. That night, I filled out an application to volunteer with a local foster advocacy group. I wasn't trying to be noble, I just needed something in my hands that wasn't rage. On Monday morning, I visited Russell's grave. I laid down the printed sonogram, the fake one now creased at the edges, no longer glowing. "You were never theirs to rewrite," I said. "They tried to make you the villain in their story. I wrote you back into mine." I didn't cry. I didn't need to. The cut may not heal, but it taught me where never to bleed again. Sometimes, truth doesn't come with fireworks or redemption arcs. Sometimes, it just sits quietly beside you in the morning light, reminding you who you are and who you'll never be again. I didn't choose to become stronger. I was given no other option. But if this story taught me anything, it's that boundaries are a form of love too, especially when they're drawn in the face of betrayal. What about you? Have you ever had to cut ties with someone who wore the same last name? Or had to stand alone so the truth could stand with you? If this video touched something in you, leave a comment with the number 1 or tell me what city you're watching from. If it didn't connect, I'd still love to know why. and where you're tuning in from. I want to hear your story too. And if you'd like more stories like this, ones that dig deep, heal slow, and walk beside you, subscribe to this channel. Your journey matters here.